Hey everybody, today we're going to be discussing the person named Reu in the Bible in Genesis chapter 11 in Shem's line. And Reu was born in 1787 AC, meaning after creation. His name, defined in Hebrew, is his friend, his shepherd, partner, companion. In 1787, here are the events that happened. You have the Shepherd's Song on the Lord's Day by Johann Ludwig Uhland, who lived from 1787 to 1862. So the song wasn't created this year, but the person who created it was born this year. So that's sort of like a he was born kind of coincidence. The person that created the Shepherd song, his shepherd. So that's one thing that happened this year. Then you have the writing of James Madison to George Washington, a plan of government, and this happened on April 16th, 1787. And this document leads to the convention in Philadelphia, which then leads to the Constitution of 1787 emerging. And then another event is a letter of a friend to the Constitution by Daniel Carroll, his friend. We're about to discuss partner, which was between Madison and Washington, also companion between Madison and Washington. So I just wanted to show you this board to show you what all we'll be discussing. So I'm going to put the board down and move a little closer. Pardon my mess. So here is the song. The Lord's own day is here. Alone I kneel on this broad plain. A matin bell just sounds again. 'Tis silence, far and near. Here kneel I on the sod. Oh, deep amazement strangely felt, as though unseen vast numbers knelt, and prayed with me to God. You heaven afar and near, so bright, so glorious seems its cope, as though e'en now its gates would ope. The Lord's own day is here. Kind of catchy. James Madison, June 8th, 1776. A plan of government, manuscript division, Library of Congress. Like all successful political endeavors, the new federal constitution, written just 4 years after the Treaty of Paris, ended the American Revolution, has many fathers and many origins. None is more important than the economic, political unrest following the war, and a band of ultra-nationalists led by Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and George Washington. Without going into the well-known peregrinations of the nationalists, as they led the way to a federal convention in 1787 in Philadelphia, it is nonetheless important to note that the partnership, I want to remind you that one of the definitions, partner, Reu, companion, we'll see that word later. We already discussed shepherd, and we discussed friend. All these events lead up to the Constitution of the United States this year. Not this year, but that year. I'm sure you understood that. Anyway, it's nonetheless important to note that the partnership between Washington and Madison was the key that unlocked the door to the convention hall. As Madison wrote to Washington on April 16, 1787, having formed in my mind some outlines of a new system, I take the liberty of submitting them without apology to your eye. This was from Madison to Washington. Vices of the Political System of the United States, April 1787, Manuscript Division, Library of Congress. The outline for a new government that Madison entrusted to Washington originated in a paper he had just completed, Vices of the Political System of the U.S. When the Virginia delegates arrived in Philadelphia in early May 1787, with Washington at their head, they immediately sat down and prepared a document based on Madison's outline that became known as the Virginia Plan of Government. Madison's plan, which favored the large states and gave enormous power to a new federal government, became the nationalist opening line of debate. After 4 months of debate and compromise recorded in great detail in Madison's Notes of Debates of the Federal Convention of 1787, the Constitution of 1787 emerged. Yet even on the verge of triumph in the convention, Madison feared failure. Writing on September 6, 1787 to his friend, companion, another key word, Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, then minister to France, Madison worried that the plan, should it be adopted, will neither effectually answer its national object nor prevent the local mischiefs which everywhere excite disgust, axed the state governments. But polished with a preamble written by Gouverneur Morris and the committees of style, the new Constitution was presented and approved by 39 of the 42 delegates then in attendance. And in 1787, we have the letter of a friend to the Constitution written by Daniel Carroll. Letter of a friend to the Constitution was printed in the Maryland Journal in October 1787. Daniel Carroll wrote Madison that he had replied to Chase's caution, and as this is the only direct reply to that article the author of this article has been able to find, I have ventured to ascribe this to him. The letter is in the Madison papers in the Department of State, which at present are restricted from use, so I am unable to print it here. A friend of the Constitution, again, the Madison Journal, number 977, Tuesday, October 16th, 1787. To the inhabitants of Baltimore town. You have been addressed in the last Friday's paper by a writer under the signature of Caution, who would persuade you that you ought to withhold your approbation at this time from the federal Constitution recommended by the Convention. This writer may have the best intentions in the world towards the public welfare and the prosperity of Baltimore, but everyone must perceive that he is an enemy to the proposed Constitution and wishes to prevent you from expressing yourselves in its favor, not only at this time, but at any future time. Mr. C. is said to be the author of this admonition, but that this is a malicious insinuation aimed at his sincerity will appear by considering his recent promise on this subject, signed and published by himself, in reference with the resolution of the Convention, upon which that promise is founded. I shall state both the resolution and promise, that you may judge for yourselves. The resolve of the Convention declares that the Constitution should be submitted to a Convention of Delegates, chosen in each state by the people under the recommendation of its legislature for their assent and ratification. Mr. C, being called upon before his election to declare himself on this point, promises to the people that he will use his endeavors, if elected, to call a convention. I would just observe on this resolve and promise, first, that the resolve makes it an absolute condition that the legislature recommend a convention to assent and ratify the Constitution. Secondly, that the promise made by Mr. C is obligatory upon him to use his endeavors to procure a convention for this purpose. And I could go on to read, but I think you get the point of the letter. He's trying to tell people, support the Constitution. Even Ben Franklin gets into it in June 28, 1787, writing, Mr. President, the small progress we have made after 4 or 5 weeks' close attendance and continual reasonings with each other, our different sentiments on almost every question, several of the last producing as many noes as ayes, is, methinks, a melancholy proof of the imperfection of the human understanding. We indeed seem to feel our own want of political wisdom, since we have been running about it in search of it. We have gone back to ancient history for models of government, and examined the different forms of those republics, which, having been formed with the seeds of their own dissolution, now no longer exist. And we have viewed modern states all around Europe, but find none of their constitutions suitable to our circumstances. In this situation of this assembly, groping as it were in the dark to find political truth, and scarce able to distinguish it, when to us, how has it happened, sir, that we have not hitherto once thought of humbly applying to the Father of lights to illuminate our understandings? In the beginning of the contest with Great Britain, when we were sensible of danger, we had daily prayer in this room for the divine protection. Our prayers, sir, were heard, and they were graciously answered. All of us who were engaged in the struggle must have observed frequent instances of a superintending providence in our favor. To that kind providence we owe this happy opportunity of consulting in peace on the means of establishing our future national felicity. And have we now forgotten that powerful friend? Or do we imagine that we no longer need his assistance? I love this portion. Friend here, as Ben Franklin is touching upon, is God. He's saying we are dependent on him. Right here. Was he not in this coming together? Was he not part of this nation being formed? So those of you who feel that this was not a nation created under God, here it is. And this is why this year these definitions, these names are so important. Not only did Reu's names symbolize something that happened in the Bible that was important, but it symbolizes a repetition throughout history of things directly in correlation to the names on the exact same years within the Bible. Think about that. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.